So I am going to explain the gruesomeness of the Searcher and a little bit of lore behind the Blue Zone. There was this original idea that I had, and the finalized version of the Blue Zone is not the same as the original. And right now I'm in between. I don't have it finalized. I'm in the in between part. I got it copyrighted, which is cool. Um, Once this is all done and over with, I give permission to people um, to use inspiration from what I've created, right? Like, I don't want it to be the same thing because I want this to be perfect in my eyes. And if I ever pass away, I'm okay with people working on this project and continuing it. Almost like, I know it's probably not ever going to be as popular as something like Star Wars, but I would love for people to work on it and see what they do in themselves because the Blue Zone, the whole idea I have around this is it's a never-ending story, right? So every single character has their own unique dynamic, their own backstory, their own storyline. So everyone's unique in that way. And I'm only focusing on some individuals while giving very good characteristics to others, but I do not delve into the backstory of those because as we live our lives, we don't know the backstory of everyone else's, right? We just know that they're human beings, and most people have good intentions, but not always. And in my storyline, there's people who've lost their minds. There's people who've committed suicide. There's people who have contracted an STD from other people who went on this mission. And there's a bunch of realistic events that go on in this story. Thing like external, extraneous variables and factors that you wouldn't really think of when you're writing a storyline. Most people don't. They just focus on the storyline. Well, this sentiment of realism, at least my definition of realism, is that everything that happens would happen as though what would happen in real life. And of course, there's some unrealistic events as well. For example, there being multiple highly intelligent species living on one single planet is very unlikely. Us as humans, we're the most complex-wise intelligent species on Earth, and yet nothing comes close to us. The closest thing that comes to us is chimpanzees, and even then, we are far more creative, and I don't know how to describe it because I'm not educated on describing the intelligence of human beings, so I don't want to like mislead anything. So there are some sentiments of unrealistic factors that happen in the Blue Zone, but I want to make it as realistic as I can. And it's more of dynamic and attention to detail than it is anything else. Because everyone does have their own storylines. Everyone has their own reasons for things they do. Certain things that people say will affect others in the way that they think and behave. And I want those things to be a reason and a result to why some people go out and do the things that they do, putting themselves in dangerous situations or losing their mind. Like Myers Jones is a character that I don't think I've uploaded on yet, but you'll see him soon. He's somebody who goes from this almost like a mad scientist, a really well-respected scientist, to this mad genius who starts murdering people. And in his mind, he thinks he's doing the right thing. He thinks he's saving them from this torture of being infected by the blue virus. Meanwhile, he has his own reasons for it that we don't even know about. We're just assuming because of the things that he's said that that's his moral justification for the things that he does. And there's other people too who've lost their minds and hurt others, and it's really crazy, and it's something I love about writing in this storyline. And the Blue Zone is so small on the grand scale of the whole planet that they're on. It's really small, and it's huge. Don't get me wrong. It's pretty big. It's like I'd say the size of maybe a small country on Earth. Like the blue zone is huge, but in comparison to the whole planet that they're on, it's relatively small. I think I have two suns. One is a blue sun that's very, very, very far away. So there's different, you know, how we have morning, afternoon, evening, nighttime. The blue zone and the planet that they're on, Planet HYZ, has different factors of that. They have morning, noon, and then this blue sunset. I don't know how to describe it, but it only occurs once every other week or something like that. I don't know yet. I was going to take the time to learn how science works around this to make the rotation of this planet correct for there to be an actual blue sun, and I have yet to figure it out, so it's going to be a little while. And yeah, it's I like this. I like when I'm writing a lot. But I started this video to talk about the Searcher, and I'm now talking about the lore of the Blue Zone and everything. The very beginning of my Blue Zone is different than what I have now. I want to combine them both together in my end result, but that's why there's different variants and different strains of the Blue Goo. But the Searcher is a very vicious, intelligent species, and they were vicious before they were infected by the blue goo, right? And this is the fun part, because I'm not even gonna tell you this. This is what I want people to make their own judgment of. The species that the Searcher is before it became the Searcher, before it became infected, is this what remains of them, or do they still exist on this planet, Planet HYZ, Telegrado? Do they exist? And I want the viewer to ask themselves that. Is this species that is now infected by the blue virus in the blue zone goes around kidnapping people, taking them back to a lab to do really fucked up experiments on them? Sorry for my language. Do they still exist? Yeah, that'd be fun thinking about, right? So the Searcher, what they do, they have a sentiment. Every species still has their own brain. They still think like how they were before, but with a new additional personality. The blue goo, it's not a virus, it's not bacteria, it's not fungi, it's not a parasite. It is a parasite. It's a parasitic creature, but it's not our definition of a parasite. It's its own strand of all that. It's a new genre of germ. So they call it the blue virus because it's the only thing they can compare it to, a virus. It behaves the way that you look at it, you think this is like some sort of slime mold, but it's not. It's way more complex than that. It's beyond human intelligence and beyond the intelligence of every other creature that has taken over. You know, on Earth, our biggest enemy, they're not lions, they're not wolves, they're not chimpanzees, they're germs. Germs are the only other species that can really have a devastating effect on us as humans, and they can wipe us out, and they can have long-lasting devastating effects and kill every single one of us if we're not careful. See, as humans, we're smart enough to synthesize medications, but there's still some viruses and germs out there that we don't have a cure for. Now that is freaky, man. So this blue goo, it is to us how we are to chickens. It knows how to domesticate them without them knowing what's going on. And so the reason why you're able to live so comfortably in the blue zone is because you're living in an ecosystem when you're not in the blue zone. You're surrounded by it. You're getting stalked. You are being watched by its creatures, by its hosts. And it knows what you're doing, And before the blue zone becomes active, it needs to know what it's dealing with, because it doesn't. You are an invasive species to its native land, right? Or it is an invasive species that was there before you. Either way, you both pose a threat to each other, and it doesn't understand you yet. It doesn't understand humans yet. So realistically, it needs to study you first. Like, you study it, you put it under a microscope, and it pretends to be dormant. Meanwhile, it's observing you, understand what you're doing, and it has a clear distinction on how to handle your species, like it has with every other species. And once it infects you, it makes you believe that you need to stay infected. And there's two ways I'm going to do this. I'm not sure which one yet. Either you are hallucinating, you believe that you need to cure everybody else, and you're putting them into spring water, but what you're actually doing is drowning them in the goo to infect them, just like you. Or your brain tells you you need to be infected. You like being infected. You need to stay here. For the player, I had some ideas about this, and I don't want to reveal them here because someone will take that idea and then I'll be a very sad person. So I might share. Because the only thing I really care about, I don't know. I'm just gonna keep talking about this. Yeah. So the searcher, when it kidnaps people, I'm sorry, I'm switching back and forth a lot. It takes him back to this lab. This lab used to belong to the species of searcher before they became searchers. The armor they wear is impenetrable, making them one of the few creatures that you have to only run from. Everything else you can fight. Them and the slime monsters, I believe, are the only two creatures that you have to run from. When they take you back to the lab, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. They start experimenting with people, like how people experiment with animals and insects and such. You know how they put a device into a roach to control its mind? Imagine that human being a roach. That's what the searchers are. They may not be, they're on an equal level of intelligence as human, but they're more advanced and they're stronger, to way stronger. If they could tear a person in half like a person would tear, I don't know, celery in half. Now that's kind of freaky, but you don't know that they're that strong until one of my favorite scenes, near the end game. There's this second to final boss fight, and it's pretty cool, and you get to see how powerful the searcher actually is when they're in desperation. But yeah, that's all I have to say for now.